So, good evening, everybody. Let me just doing a couple of quick little housekeeping measures right now, trying to make sure that we are up and live on all of our platforms. If you have not, please go to the YouTube channel, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. A little bit of housekeeping early. Not sure if my co-host Chuck Snow, seems like we're having a little bit of a technical problem, so we're trying to get him squared away. But if not, we have our special guest that is on board, Mr. Mike Lampel, our resident economist, is joining us this evening. A couple of housekeeping notes: we are not going to be broadcasting next week. Next Tuesday is February the 14th, Valentine's Day. Got a little something planned special for the missus. So we are not going to be on the air next week unless we get a chance to pre-record a show. We may have an opportunity to pre-record a show, and if we get to do that, then don't worry about it. You'll get a notification, and we'll be going on without a hiccup. But the show will not be live. If you want to participate in tonight's show, if you have a question for either myself or for our special guest, Mr. Mike Lampel, you can interact with us using the chat feature. If you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Twitter, I believe all of those have the access for you to be able to communicate with us via chat. So if you have a question, you can ask your question via the chat, and we'll see it and we'll bring it up and try our best to involve you and wrap you into the conversation. With that being said, we're going to jump right over into this week's DAT trend lines report. Just a little bit we're going to hit it really quickly. There is opportunities to be had this week if you're in Florida. As you know, like I previously just said, the February 14th is coming up, and of course, fresh flowers are moving, and they are really, really moving. The problem is with fresh flowers is that it is a difficult delivery. If you've ever done flowers, you know it's mostly always driver assist, driver unload. There are always boxes that are involved, so make sure that if you're down there and you're having to price your services, make sure that you're pricing accordingly. Make sure that you are getting, you're taking into account all of the different things and the different services that you will be rendering when performing those services when you're doing those deliveries. But with that being said, the fuel prices we're showing are slowly creeping downward a little bit. We're showing that they came down by 1.8 percentage points, almost two whole percentage points since last week. We're showing that the national average price of diesel fuel is sitting at $4.54 per gallon on a nationwide basis right now. And with that being said, I don't want to belabor the point at all. I want to go ahead and bring up our guest that took time to hang out with us this evening, Mr. Michael Lampel. Mike, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
I'm doing well. We're one man down. Not sure if Chuck is going to figure it out to get involved with us this evening, but as the old circus saying goes, no one monkey doesn't stop a show. So.
But we did send out a search and rescue team, and I hear from the latest pub and chicken wings outlet that he's going to be back soon.
Well, we would love to have his input and be able to join us this evening. I tell you what, Mike.
Yes, go ahead, my man.
We're looking at a lot of different things. You're hearing a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm always watching NBC. It's always kind of playing along in the background wherever I am. And, people are debating, are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? Are we in a bull market? Are we in a bear market? What do you think? Give us your and look what the cat drug in. Look.
And he does look like the cat drug it in.
Give me a minute, guys.
Right now, the cat doesn't look too healthy after what it just brought in.
Give me a minute. I'm getting professionals here helping me.
we'll give Chuck a second to get squared away here. But
Rico is asking me what the difference is between a recession and a depression.
Hang on.
Just mute it.
Hang on.
We'll
You never sounded better, Chuck.
Here in just a second. I'll bring him back up in a second. But yeah, Mike.
So, Rico, you're asking me what the difference is between the recession and depression. A recession is when my neighbor loses a job, and a depression is when I lose my job.
Yeah. You've told me that a couple of times, but
That's right.
Are we looking at how, as far as with everything going on with the Knicks, I guess maybe if you can dust off the crystal ball and say within the next 2 to 3 months. I really want to kind of focus on maybe that time frame, the next quarter or so. Just kind of what do you feel? Where do you feel we are as far as the economic curve?
Well, economics is one of those strange things, which is, every economist says, I got a great prediction, and I'll let you know in a year if I was right. Because basically, they're all guesses. But, in reality, what everybody's feeling right now is that the Kool-Aid days are over. Like,
right.
They're done. We're back to reality.
Absolutely.
The last, what are we, 2023? The last 14 years have been a really nice mirage.
Well, definitely the last couple of years, even though we were in the midst of a pandemic, but the inflation just exploded over the past couple of years, and and people thought that, especially in the transportation industry, we're kind of like the canary in the coal mine. We kind of see things before anything else affects our industry, kind of like on the forefront. And in the beginning, when pandemic hit, we started seeing crazy price increase on equipment. We started seeing people were getting crazy rate increases, especially on the spot markets. And so everything looked like it was great and golden. It was just bustling. And now everything, especially at this time of the year for the trucking industry, things have come kind of to a screeching halt. And now I probably fielded about, and this is not even exaggerating, 10 to 15 phone calls from people asking me for advice on what do I do, because they are either at points where they're contemplating selling equipment and just closing down, or trying to figure out a different direction in which to go, because they jumped in without really having a full game plan as to what they were going to do once they got in the industry. They heard it was money to be made, and they said they heard it. What was the old saying? It's gold in them their heels.
Yeah.
If you don't mind going into the tunnels and then watching it collapse on top of you, there's gold in them their hills.
Right. Right. And unfortunately, I had to give a couple of people some bad advice. Some bad news. A couple people, they was telling me their situation, and I really didn't see. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I really didn't see any other way for them to make it out of the situation that they had already put themselves into.
You just said it, Rico. You said it perfectly. The situation they put themselves into. Nobody can mess somebody up like they can. We are all our own worst enemies. And, on this show, as well as some other shows, we warned everybody, and beyond months ago, years ago, that this was going to happen, because this wasn't reality. What we saw in the last 3 years, especially. It's 35 months since everything went down, and for the first month of the pandemic, if you remember correctly, things weren't too great, and I actually was starting to think it might be the end of our world. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, about April or May of 2020, all of a sudden, the equipment, started to get scarce, and all these other things, and people were paying crazy rates on the spot market. But anybody that knew, there's 3 guys on this call, and we've all been around the horn a few times, and we knew this couldn't last forever. Now, interesting about inflation, you were just talking about it, just before the pandemic, in the November before the pandemic, I was at the NASDAQ conference in Louisville or in Nashville, Tennessee.
Nashville.
Nashville, and they had an economist by the name of Broughton, I think his name was. He's very respected, and he said at that time there will be no inflation because of technology. It will not happen. And he was wrong on that one.
That's why I said earlier, right? An economist will give you a prediction, and then a year from now, will tell you if he was right.
Big time.
Exactly. So, Mike, I got to ask you a question. I hear it, and as a matter of fact, yesterday I was reading, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, the economists think it's in small print at the bottom, economists think it's going to be a soft landing. How the heck does anybody know how we're going to land? Nobody knows. You hope it's going to be a soft landing.
Well, again, if I jump off a 10th story when I hit the ground, it ain't no soft landing.
Exactly.
Okay.
What's your
unless I
take
got a
on
Chinese balloon, in which case it's a very soft landing.
Only because they shot you down over the ocean, not over Montana.
I got to tell you, there's got to be an easier way to get takeout. Look, guys, we've been talking about this for a long time, and I said this a couple of years ago when we started all this, right? I said the last 14 years have been an illusion. And I know it's hard for a lot of people to believe, but when you look at the 10-year bond, which is really the gauge of the whole thing. So if you want to know where the world is going, there's a disconnect between the Federal Reserve and the 10-year bond, right? So what I warned all these years was, and I said this to my clients because I'm in the financial business and everything else, I said, look, guys, 2% is not normal interest.
No.
Right.
Okay. So, you got to give it to them. They basically flooded the system with trillions of dollars, not just the last 2 years, but the last 14 years, right? This started during the financial collapse, QE1, QE2, QE3. They kept going and kept going and kept going. Rates kept going lower, 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 lower. And in the meantime, what happened was that basically the government said to the banks, give money away, just give it away. And they did. I mean, what you're seeing today is that everybody, in fact, I was listening to an interesting report. Last month, the US credit card debt grew by 15%.
In 1 month?
And I think it was 1 month or 1 quarter, but it was the largest increase in 20 years.
Wow.
Right. So, we said this for a long time to a lot of the people listening to the show, which is watch your balance sheet, watch your debt levels, collect your money, careful what you spend the money on. Right.
Yeah.
If you could, Chuck, your person who's always said, if you could squeeze another 50,000 miles out of that truck, squeeze it until the damn thing bleeds.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? Don't go out and buy another truck simply because you feel like, hey, you know what, the chair's a little too soft, I'll go get another one.
Yep.
So all we're doing really, if you look at the 10-year bond aside, interest rates are just back to where they were in 2008.
Where they should have been all along.
Well, yeah, I mean, but they played games for all these years, and now it's called deleveraging. So now comes the slog of getting out of this stuff, paying off the credit cards. Now, the other part is that while a lot of people think there's inflation, it's actually not inflation. What's happening is prices and wages are just going to where they should have been had they been increasing by the rate of inflation since the 2000s. So all that happened, guys, was that the financial system simply says, instead of people asking for more raises, let's just give them more credit. As long as they had credit, they didn't ask for raises.
Right. So they were borrowing their raise.
Pretty much. Higher lines of credits on houses, more credit cards, easier car loans, easier payments, pretty much. And remember, they had cheap goods coming in from Southeast Asia, cheap goods at that time coming in from China. So again, they were basically subsidizing wage increases with borrowed money, borrowed jobs, borrowed everything. And now comes the reality.
So
And the
Mike,
reality sucks. Yeah.
so Mike, with the reality check being here, the bill is coming due. What, like I say, within the next quarter or so, what are the effects of all of this? What do you anticipate? How do you anticipate
Well,
this affecting the market?
that's a very good question. So I'll tell you, I think the Federal Reserve is totally wrong because you now have, and we're in Canada, we have a bigger problem than you do. We have the dog chasing the tail.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that the prices of core materials are going up, gas,
Mhm.
food. You can raise rates as much as you want, but they still got to eat.
Right?
They still need to fill up the tank. They still need to get to work. They still need to pay their electricity bill. They still need to pay. They still need to do all that, right? So you could keep raising rates, but the problem is no longer raising rates. The problem is the government is so involved in our economy, right, that they're basically going to keep raising rates to try and beat down inflation that's being driven by government spending. So, and in Canada, let me tell you something. In Canada, the average median income in Canada of a family of two in Ontario is $87,000. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, except for one small detail. The government gives them another $22,000 in subsidies.
Interesting.
So why cut your spending? I've got 87K coming in family income, and I got $22,000 in benefits from the government.
So it's
Hmm.
$99,000, or it's more than that. It's 100 and
22, yeah, the 22,000 is tax free.
yeah.
So you can keep raising rates all you like, Mr. Powell, but until you tell the government to stop doing what it's doing. And by the way, I got to tell you something. People may say that, but when Uncle Sam is handing out checks, nobody wants to tell it to stop.
Yeah, nobody was. They definitely wasn't sending the checks back. That's for sure.
No,
That's
definitely
right.
not.
It's more like I want you, Uncle Sam.
Bring your money.
And so now we have an issue. We have people that have went out and bought things at inflated prices. Like you say, the trucks were selling at one point in time, people paying, and somebody just posted on here, Gino just said, people went out and bought trucks, $260,000, payments running around $6,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when things were good, because this is a very similar situation that I had a talk with someone with yesterday. They were asking me, they was like, person that bought a truck, it was 3 months ago. And I was like, well, if they bought it 3 months ago, I know they paid top dollar for it. So selling it is probably almost not really even a viable option at this point, because I was, when they called me and was telling me what their issue was, I was under the impression that they had the truck for a little while, or it was paid off, but that wasn't even an option for them to be able to try to remedy their situation. So you got people that you may have gotten a cheap interest rate, but if you pay an absorbent price, like I'm having a problem, still making
It's
the
called
connection
squaring the
on how this
circle.
gonna make.
It's called, yeah, you're talking about squaring the circle. But look, I said this to Chuck for many, many years. You're not in the freight business. The people who are online who think they're in the freight business, you're not in the freight business. You're in the commodity business.
Yes.
And the
100.
commodity is air. So if you're gonna think to yourself, well, how do I survive a commodity cycle? And all commodities go through cycles: copper, oil, gold, diesel fuel. It all goes through cycles. You want to study the companies who survived the downturn and say, how did they do it? How did they survive the downturn? Right? Because there were times when oil was like, I remember when oil was like $11 a barrel, right?
Right,
And there are times when oil is $154 a barrel. So how
right,
do these companies survive? Well, what they do is they set up contingency funds, and they slice off a percentage of all their current income for future contingency funds, because they realize there's going to be a time when pumping a barrel of oil is going to be below the cost. Right? So you might be able to drill down on all your costs of what it costs you to run a mile, But at the end of the day, you got external forces you can't control:
Yeah.
weather, diesel fuel, insurance
Always.
rates.
Yeah.
You got so many variables you can't control.
And what you get paid. You can't really control that because trucking is a commodity and it's now a live market. That's what people don't understand. They're all real happy when freight is paying crazy prices of $5, $6, $7 a mile, $10 a mile. Everybody's ecstatic, and then all of a sudden, when you hit reality and freight is $1.73 a mile, now all of a sudden, not so happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm seeing that we're not seeing any like there doesn't seem to be any relief in sight as far as the whole Ukrainian-Russian conflict, and maybe if there is a resolution that comes to that, but I'm not seeing anything that looks like it's anywhere close. But if that may help ease some of the pain a little bit when it comes
Well,
to fuel prices, possibly.
well, the funny part of the whole story is right now, Russia, even under all the sanctions, is sitting on like a $250 billion fund because it's still selling its oil even at reduced rates on the
Right.
on market to other countries. Now, the first thing Russia is going to want to do when this thing does come to an end, and God willing, it'll come to an end tomorrow, but it's not going to be happening, is they're going to want to open up the pipelines real fast. Like they're going to, and believe me, right now they're under sanctions. So what's going to happen is when this thing comes to an end, Russia's going to want to dump all its oil on the market as fast as it can.
Sure.
The question that becomes is, what will the governments let them do? But what saved us this winter, guys, except for the United States, which, congratulations, you guys are getting our winter and we're getting Florida weather. We love it. Go global warming, go. Is that the weather in Europe was fairly mild, so they never used the natural gas they stored. Germany's tanks are full of natural gas. So, in fact, the market now for a million BTUs of natural gas is down to like 250 per million BTU. It was at $11 a BTU when the war began.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So the commodity cycle typically the inflation is weird because it's the core inflation. So you can raise interest rates all you like, but it's the core inflation that's going up. And people have already really reduced going out, really reduced a lot of these things. Car companies are cutting their prices. So but as you saw, as we talked many times before, the last time we talked, the furniture company was going out of business. Now Bed Bath and Beyond is going out of business.
But that's been teetering for a long time.
Right.
That one.
Yeah. But you know what pushed it over?
Interest rates?
Correct. Debt. All the debt. The amount of corporate debt out there is in the trillions of dollars. Trillions. And it was all done on like 3% interest.
Wow.
So they're calling. They're calling all those notes. They're calling those notes due.
No, the notes are maturing. They're maturing, and now it's time to either pay the note back or refinance. But if you refinance, you got to refinance at today's rate. Which even if you're a good solid company, you're still going to pay 5-6% interest. You were paying 2, now you're going to pay 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So it depends on your debt levels, right?
The big thing really, Mike, as you always say, and I think it's the key to any business. I don't care if you're running one truck or 1,000 trucks. Watch your debt. Watch how much debt you're exposed to with all things. It's not just the debt that you have from your operating line or equipment or whatever. It's also the money you're putting out on the street, the work you're doing for customers, making sure you get paid. That's really, I think that's paramount right now. You've got to have eyes in the back of your head because what's happened to me before is I've had customers go under. Now, it's been years since, under my watch, where we had a customer go under that gave us signs we hadn't had, because as traffics grew, our we became a little bit more sophisticated in how we did things. And, when a company we were doing business with, all of a sudden their payment terms changed all of a sudden from 30-day terms to 50-day terms. We just put, we put the brakes on. But what happened in most cases, almost all cases in the last 10 years, was there was no sign that they were having issues. They paid their bills, and then all of a sudden, boom, they just got hit. Now, maybe they were paying their carriers to make sure their product got to market, but even their credit reports that we were doing all along did not say anything about that. And we always kept an eye on that. But what did happen to some of our customers through the years was that they got taken by one of their customers for more money than they could afford, and that's what put them under.
Yeah.
And that is in this environment, that is the biggest danger for any company.
Yeah, and Chuck raises a really good point. I want to tell something to everybody who's listening tonight. Don't trust the credit rating agencies.
You're right.
Don't.
Yes.
The system is rigged. Believe me, I know more than I should know, and we can spend an hour on just that. You got to do your own research. You got to Google their name. You got to go down the thread. You got to know your customers. If you got a customer who is going to be 60% of your revenue, 40% of your revenue, 30% of your revenue, do your research on them, right? Find out who their customers are. Then research their customers.
100%.
Right? You got to know this stuff, because if you're going to rely on these people to pay your bills, you better know how they're doing. And don't trust the credit rating agencies. I want to remind people here tonight, whoever's listening, the following. The 2008 financial collapse was partly caused by credit rating agencies giving AAA credit rating to junk bonds.
Yeah.
Do you know, Rico, do you know which credit is rated AAA?
No.
The US 10-year bond. Everybody else is below that. But they were giving AAA credit rating to car loans.
Wow. Which it kind of, if you say car loans, that automatically makes me think go right to thinking about Carvana.
Not just Carvana. If anybody here wants to have a really bad night's sleep, read Michael Lewis's The Big Short.
Oh, yes.
And you go like, forget the movie. But when you read it, like, oh my God, what were they thinking?
Yeah.
And all of this was caused by the credit rating agencies sticking AAA grade beef on all the debt. Because they're paid a ton of money to go AAA grade beef on all the debt. So don't trust these guys.
No, because they don't, you know what? Stuff happens quickly. And what I have seen in my time, and I don't know, I'm not on the load boards anymore, but when I was working the load boards every day, both as a carrier and a broker, you could see what somebody's credit was like. You could see another broker, when I went on the portal to look at brokers, because we were going to take work from a broker, I could see what their credit was like. And I remember one large broker in Ontario going down. And after they went, we got the call that they were down, and they did owe us a little bit of money. It wasn't much. But I looked online, because in those days on LoadLink, which is the Canadian sister to DAT,
basically it's Tinder for freight.
That's right. Exactly. And there used to be a credit report from one of the large credit agencies, and I don't want to say their name on the show because I don't want to get sued, but there was two names, and the first one started with a D. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. And the second one,
last letter was an S.
T. I'm not going to say anymore. And they gave them a really high credit rating. 5 minutes after they went bankrupt, they still had a high credit rating. Okay, right. So I learned a long time ago that you can use it as a tool, but it's not the end all. You
Yeah.
can't go to the bank 100% and sleep well. But even companies, I can tell you, they use a number of matrix. They use a bunch of credit agencies. They compare them, and they've got their own teams that are checking credit all the time. And they're checking to see what industry they're being exposed to. And, if they, if they hear that, for example, the construction industry is really, it's about to fall off the edge of the earth, they're going to be very careful about, lending money basically, or lending on companies that would be hurt by the construction industry.
Yeah. So
And that's
one of my tips I got to tell everybody listening tonight is this: take a good long hard look at all your debt, all of it, personal as well as your business, machine, all of it. And I would really recommend you start shopping around for new debt to replace it. Because if you can find, and the good news is, unlike before, there's a lot of secondary markets out there. So if you could refinance the debt to ride the wave out and sink it by 2, 3, 4 points, try and do that. Cash flow is king. Debt
Yes.
payments are a killer. So don't worry about the amortization, how long I got to pay. Worry about the cash flow. And say to yourself, if I could take $100 off the financing, talk about somebody about renegotiating and try and get that down.
Yeah. And, challenge yourselves. That's the other thing. It's take a look at your company and what are your expenses and how can you drill down? What can you do to save $1,000 a month on your truck, in running your truck? Can you run a little bit slower? Right now, with freight rates being compressed, maybe if you ran at 55 or 60 instead of 70 miles an hour, you may save a little. It depends on the truck, of course, and how it's geared, but you may just save a few cents a mile.
Right.
And that adds up.
On 150,000 miles a year, that's a lot of money.
That's right.
It goes into your pocket.
Now, a lot of good, Rico, you probably do this. I know Chuck used to do, is a lot of people, I'm going to tell you a trick, which is something which is cool to do. If you got a credit card with cashbacks that you use all the time, for your meals on the road and your gas and all that, overload the card. Put extra cash on the card. Convert your credit card into a debit card.
Right.
You're still going to get the points, but now you're running down to zero and you're not paying interest.
Yes.
So
Absolutely. Well, understand, and I think that's a show that we still got to do. I want to make sure to make it a point that we talk about credit cards and how to utilize them if on your business, within your business, understanding the difference between your statement date and your due date, understanding how to use the float where you don't have to pay interest, you get free interest rate,
free money.
Free money. It's better than using
free money. Free money.
Any kind of a factoring company, anything like that. If you I'll even share this. Got an anniversary coming up, 1 year wedding anniversary coming up. We're going off to Zima Beach out in Anguilla. Never been there before, but beautiful property. It's one of the Hilton properties. But because of my American Express Platinum card that I have, the points that I utilized within the past year, if I hadn't have saved points to pay for this trip, I'm paying for airline flights, round trip airline flights from Atlanta down directly down there and back. The cost of accommodations, everything involved. If I'd paid out of pocket, I would have been well over right around $12,000 to $15,000.
Whoa!
All of that is free, just because I've utilized the points that I spent within my business. But I'm able to do all of that stuff. I'm able to do and utilize that because I have credit card points. We were able to save them up, and if you can. Anybody can do that. Save them up, and you can utilize them for whatever special occasion that you got, and you can get really great aspirational travel benefits and everything like that, and it's all for free. And my American Express, there are two different types of American Expresses. I have the charge card. I don't have the credit cards.
I
got the other card. I got American Depressed.
So
So Rico, what sort of card is this?
With the American Express, that simply means that with the charge card, there's a charge card and there's a credit card. With the charge card, that simply means that the balance is due 30 days.
Okay.
30 days, the entire balance is due. You can't necessarily carry a balance with the charge card, whereas with the credit card, you can carry a balance. But that's not what we want to do anyway. We want
right. But here, guys, actually, I got to tell you something funny. You could use any credit card. You're totally allowed to put over the amount. So if you got a $5,000 card, you put $7,000 on it, and you run the $2,000 down to zero. You could do it with any credit card.
Yes, but I prefer to use one with I prefer to have one with points.
If you have $1,000 credit,
no, you have a points card. No, you get the points, Chuck. You get the points.
I get that. But if you have $1,000 limit, can you go over that $1,000?
No,
it's not the other way around. It's not that. But if you go over the $1,000,
pay ahead of time. I get what he's saying. If you pay ahead of time, they'll give you like if you only have a $1,000 limit. But if you pay $2,000 on it, even though you got $1,000, they're going to give you that extra $1,000.
They're going to give you $2,000.
Right, and you get the points.
Right.
I get it.
Yeah, correct. So now you're whittling down to zero. You're not paying them interest, right? Because you're going down to zero. You got the points, right?
I couldn't agree more, guys. I got to tell you, when I go into a store to make a purchase and I see somebody pull out their debit card, I want to scream at them. Why are you using a debit card? Use a credit card and get the points. Plus, you get 30 days to pay. Are you stupid?
Well, not only that, with the credit card as well, you have protections built in.
Yes,
and you automatically have protections. Certain credit cards got different benefits, different bonuses. But I know another great perk that I get with American Express. If I went out and bought a laptop. Right. I damaged this laptop. As long as I paid for it with my American Express card, if it gets damaged, stolen, or anything like that, it's covered under insurance. I don't have to pay for extra insurance. American Express will cover it for. There's a time period. I think it's like I want to say 90 days. I got a 90-day extra built-in guarantee of insurance. With my cell phones, all my cell, with these iPhones, these high-dollar cell phones, as long as I pay my bill with my American Express card, it has cell phone insurance on it. So if I drop it, crack the screen, anything like that, take it to the Apple store. They go ahead and let them repair it and fix it. I pay for it with my American Express card, and they'll give me a statement credit for reimbursing me for the entire repair. Up to $800.
Yeah, but there's so many ways of playing this game, Chuck. Number one, guys, if you need tires, go online, research tires, then find out who's willing to give you interest-free financing. Right. Go get the tires there and say, give me interest-free financing. I'll take your tires because I'm going to basically use your money for the next year. Money. Awesome. Right. There's so many ways of doing this, right? You take your credit cards. You go find online cheap transfer credit cards. Transfer the credit card balance to new credit cards, which give you very cheap. Sometimes a lot of them will give you like 2% interest on transfers. Take the transfer,
zero,
but make sure
you get zero for the first. Most of them doing zero for the first year.
There you go. Yeah. So apply for them. Transfer the $5,000-$10,000 onto the interest-free transfer for this. Then make sure that you get rid of it and cancel the card before the $120 fee they want to charge you at the end of the year. So there's a lot of ways of playing it. It's a little bit more hassle, but at the end of the day, okay, $500 here, $1,000 there, $1,000 there, $1,000 there. Before you know it, Gino says he loves his Platinum MX. Well, dude, if you got a Platinum X, why the hell you listen to us?
Because he pays his bills. That's why. He's got good credit. And I got to tell you.
Well, then why are you watching the Three Deadbeats?
You know what?
Hey, I got a platinum too.
No, it's
Yeah, no.
having good credit is so important because you never know when you need it.
Yeah, listen, I got a friend of ours who's like, I won't say how many zeros are behind their name. His
Right.
credit card limit is $2,500 and he refuses to raise it. He does. He actually refuses to raise it.
Why?
Why? Because he can pay cash for anything he
Yeah,
wants.
but if he pays, I don't care how many zeros. Why give your money away
Right.
if you can get 30-day terms? If you're going to buy, let's say the guy goes and he buys himself $20,000 worth of parts for his,
Or a Ferrari.
parts
Or
for
a
his,
Ferrari.
yeah,
Or a Ferrari.
parts for
Which he paid in cash.
he could have put that on a credit card and gone around the world.
He can go around the world anyway. He doesn't need the points to do that.
You know, I got to tell you, the wealthiest people that I know, not the richest, okay, because I learned something. There's a
There's a
big
difference.
difference between somebody being rich and
Yep.
somebody being wealthy.
Huge difference.
The rich guy drives the Ferrari or the Lamborghini. The wealthy guy never would. Okay, he would.
The wealthy guy basically says the only people wearing Ferrari outfits are the ones who don't have the car.
You got it.
If you're wearing a Ferrari hat, you don't own the Ferrari.
Exactly. You know, the wealthy people do not flaunt their money. They use it and they enjoy it, but they use it as a tool, and they do things exactly what we're talking about, like getting points on their credit cards and don't never carry a balance, and do things like that. And that's what the rich guy doesn't care because he'll
Listen, I mean, look, at the end of the day, people said, when you think of Sam Walton, the man who started Walmart, he drove a 1961 pickup till the day he died.
Yes, I read.
And he would stay at the closest Holiday Inn, closest to the stores. One of the most famous stories, one of the cheapest men in the world, is the guy who owned IKEA. Do you know the famous story? This is a great story. He was in Europe. He was with his top 5 purchasing VPs, driving from store to store in Europe. And they got to this one town at the end of the day. They were in 2 cars, and the hotel was full. There was no room. And the 5 VPs are calling around trying to find other rooms. And he said, "I'm sorry, we have cars. Why do we have to get rooms? Get comfortable."
Oh. Well, you know what? Along that line, Walmart, who's a company I always admired how they did things to a point, and I don't know what it's like now because the world has changed with just the way it is. But I know that 15 years ago, if you were an executive for Walmart, they had like a dispatch center. And if you called up Bentonville Dispatch Center and said, "Good afternoon, it's Rico Muhammad. I'm visiting customers in San Mateo, California, or I'm visiting suppliers in San Mateo, or visiting stores," they would go, "Oh, that's great. Matter of fact, you will be staying with Mike Lampel. He's your roommate tonight at the Motel 6." And they would rent rooms and they would pair people up. And that's what they did. I don't know what it's like now, but I know 15 years ago they were still doing that.
Yeah. I think what we're trying to tell everybody listening tonight
What's
is
that?
watch the pennies.
Yep.
They add up.
We talked about this last week as well when we had the trucking CFO on with us.
Yes.
And this is a critical component. I want to kind of relate back and talk to people about this as well. We talked. I don't know how many people may have followed up and checked in with the trucking CFO, but if you don't already have something in place, if you don't understand what your cost per mile is right now, if someone should be able to wake you up at 3:30 a.m. or roll you out of bed, and you should so intimately be involved and know your numbers to the point to where you can within a penny you should be able to know what your cost per mile is,
That's right.
what your projected cost per mile is for the next month or so. You should be kind of doing those things to get your projections out so that you can understand those things, to be intimately involved with your business. So because if you're not familiar with those numbers, and if you're running your business, those are the things that allow you to get in trouble, because you can't prepare. You don't know. You're not knowing how to. Michael said earlier, they have having contingency plans, having to pay down or to have set asides to get through things. This is the whole difference between. I'm gonna come right to you, Mike. This is the whole difference of shifting your mindset when you decide that you want to become an entrepreneur and that you're in this trucking game. This is the whole shift in mindset that you got to come out of, from thinking from a company aspect to thinking about, okay, I own a business and I'm actually really running a true business. This is not one of those situations where, okay, I got money left over at the end of the week, so I guess I'm profitable. That's not going to cut it. You got to get much more detailed. You got to get much more drilled down and detailed into the finer points of everything that is going on, right down to the cents, so that you can understand of your operating costs. All right, Michael, I'm sorry about that.
I do a lot of financial work with my clients, and I tell you, for everybody listening tonight, there's a very simple way of doing this, right? You basically open up an Excel spreadsheet and you count your expenses the following way. Forget income. The first thing you want is on the top part is your fixed costs, and these are things are the same amount you pay every month, right? So if it's office rent, it's the same amount every month. And you go through your fixed expenses first, then you go through your transportation cost next. And those are things like the gas costs and things of that nature. Then you go to variable costs, things you have no control over, but they have to be paid every single month. That's your variable cost. And then here's the part you're going to hate the most. Underneath that is another category called discretionary cost. And that's where you start recording toiletries expenses, food expenses, bar expenses, things that you spent the money on, but they're not required for anything else. Now, you start looking at the fixed, the variable, and then your transportation costs are different, right? Because you got your insurance costs, you got your lease payment costs, that's your transportation. Running your business is on top, and that could be salaries, that could be your office rent. That's the top part. Then you look at the bottom of your discretionary. And then you look at it, you say, okay, what percentage of my cost is discretionary? And you're going to be in for a shock. Most of the people I work with always ends up being over 50% is discretionary spending. Stuff that just comes out of their pocket every single day, and they just don't pay attention.
It's very easy to do if you're not paying. If you're not on top of it on a daily basis, to be really conscious of what it is that you're doing, it becomes, and I think that we've kind of become conditioned to it because of the simple fact, just like we talked about earlier. Now, I know, hell, I don't carry cash anymore really I don't have any cash in my wallet. I got all these damn credit cards, and it becomes a lot more difficult to understand how much you're spending if you're not actually physically spending it.
You know what? They've done, Rico, you're right on the money. They've done studies, and people that go out or go shopping or go to restaurants spend less money if they're paying cash. And you realize that's a $20 bill. That I just lost half of that 20 at a Starbucks buying a coffee for my friend and I.
And they're so well researched now, Chuck. They're so well researched now that a lot of restaurants have now all moved to cashless restaurants. You can't even pay it if you wanted to.
Well, I'm not making this up, guys. I have a relative that owned a franchise, a very well-known Canadian donut and coffee chain, the biggest one. They had a franchise, and when they were taking cash to the bank, and this was probably 10, 15 years ago, they got charged by the bank for handling cash.
Mm-hmm.
because the bank had a cost that they didn't have with credit cards.
And just so you know, that's actually an economic principle. There is a thing which and you guys would know that, but it's called velocity of money, and they actually do track that. Okay. So the central banks track what's called velocity of money, which is how fast does a dollar change hands.
Right.
So when you're thinking about inflation, and when people are saying, why is inflation now? Inflation's been building up for a long time, but everything takes a decade to catch up.
Right.
It doesn't happen like this. It happens a decade later. So when you think about cashless society, the interest rates now slows down the velocity of money. So when you're asking me at the beginning of the show, we're going to have a recession, just think about it, that basically what they've done was since 2008, since the Lehman collapse, they've been pouring grease all over the highway.
Right.
To speed this thing up as fast as they can, right? Because they said, when Lehman collapsed, basically the engine seized.
Right.
And if anybody here wants to have a nightmare, by all means, watch a show called Too Big to Fail, and you will see a nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if anybody's watching here, there was an interesting part of that show, which was when Ben Bernanke said to Nancy Pelosi, we need $800 billion. And she said, where's your proposal? And he handed her 3 pages. And she said, what's that? That's our proposal. She said, you want us to give you $800 billion on 3 pages? Yes. But you want to know what the scariest part was?
They gave it to me.
There's an actual photograph of Hank Paulson, the former CEO of Goldman Sachs, getting on one knee, begging for the money.
Wow.
There's an actual photograph. Remember, this is the CEO of Goldman Sachs.
Not his finest moment, Michael.
On his knee. No, that's how scared he was. That's how terrified he was. He said, if you don't give me this money, and Ben Bernanke told him in the meeting, if we don't have this money by Friday, you don't have an economy by Monday. It's that fast.
So you know what? Really, well, if we look at it, we don't have an economy. It's propped up falsely.
This is a house of cards.
What they're doing now, right? So what they're doing now by raising rates, everybody, is they're simply starting to dump sand all over the grease.
Right.
So when you got a car that's traveling 130, at 100 miles an hour, and it's down to 65, it feels real slow.
Feels like you're stopped. Yeah.
Right.
100%.
So, but what that means is you got to watch your gauge. You got to watch what you're doing. I think everybody here, if you take away anything tonight, start building that contingency fund. I don't care if it's 5% of your earnings. Just put it aside. Just get it out of your way. Right? Set up a separate account, get it out of the way.
When at the time when many people could have and should have been building their contingency funds, when our seasoned veterans listening to this show and ones that don't listen to the show, when they were getting those ones that were out there in the spot market, getting those extra rates for that 2-year period of time and doing very well. The smart ones, they put it away for a rainy day. And the other ones thought this is never going to end. It's kind of like that sunny day in July with not a cloud in the sky, and it's 75 or 80 degrees, and you can't imagine there being a harsh winter ahead. But
or it's the banks giving you an umbrella when it's sunny and taking it away when it's raining.
You got it. But we wouldn't have this problem with all of a sudden with credit card debt spiraling out of control. And remember, credit card debt is expensive debt. It's not like nobody's getting credit card debt for 5 or 8%. They're paying
26, 27%.
Yeah, this stuff will kill you. It'll put.
And the funny part, remember, guys, we were talking about this before, and I said to you, the reason why it's 27% was because 30% is considered loan sharking.
Yes,
usually 30%. Right.
Yeah.
But also financing your trucks, refinance what you can, get the cash flow to a point where you're saying, okay. And also it's important to renegotiate this stuff because you need that money to come aside to pay your own personal bills.
Right? Real quick, Mike.
You're not in business for business.
We're talking about restructuring just really quickly. If someone is in a position right now, say they have the equipment, they have their equipment paid off, everything they got, they have all the pink slips and everything, but they happen to find themselves in a little bit of a bind. What advice would you give to somebody that has that? Would you think would it be better for them to maybe approach their bank and maybe refinance or put start over making payments on the trucks or something like that, maybe more put the truck back in and renegotiate and try to get cash to kind of
that's a great question. I handle a lot of business people. I'm going to tell, first off, the number one rule, guys, you got to follow this. Do not do all your business banking with one bank.
Mm-hmm.
Don't. You never want these guys to know everything about you. Right? So split it up. That's number one. Number two, so much as refinancing things is necessary, I get it. But pay attention to the terms, not just the rates.
Right.
Especially ask the core question of every single one of them. I'm so thankful you give me the money, but tell me what happens if I can't pay. And you want to listen to the story of each one as they explain to you what they're going to do if you can't pay. Make your decision. It's sometimes better to pay the extra 1 point and get a guy who says, well, we'll give you 6 months grace. I love you. I'll take the 1 point extra.
Yeah. Because we don't know.
Give yourself the breathing room. So don't just shop for the rate, shop for the conditions.
Yeah, what made me think about that was that, because you hear all the time, especially in social media now, you hear people talking about utilizing leveraging, leveraging assets, doing all different types
of things
to be able to leverage. But there's a difference between someone of our, our core audience, the 1 to 5 fleet owners. There's a difference between our leveraging versus a guy that's a Fortune 500 company. They may restructure. They may be able to restructure his leveraging. Whereas with if we get overextended, then there's no restructuring plan for us.
No, I mean, listen, the banks will gladly give you a rope and lynch you up to about 2 inches from your toes from the ground and see how long you can stand on your toes.
Rico, the other thing is, why are you borrowing money on paid for equipment? Now, if you need it to run your business, is it to expand? Is it to rebuild your engine, which happens? But the big question is, why are you borrowing money? Are you losing money? Is that why? Are you losing money? So you're trying to borrow your way out of it? Because that doesn't work. Ask Bed Bath & Beyond.
Right.
Okay.
I figured we were on the subject matter, and I was just throwing some ideas out there for some people. Like I say, some people may be in a situation where that may be an option, or they may feel like, okay, well, I can do this if I can get a $40,000. If I can get $40,000 to put aside for
question, Rico, is it? Yeah, but Rico, look, we got to be honest with ourselves before we got to go. Not everybody should be in this business.
Absolutely.
And if you're refinancing in order to,
that's what I told someone yesterday. It's the culling of the herd. Right now, it's tough out here, and right now, the people that jumped in and because I'm seeing a lot of people that haven't been in the business long at all. I'm seeing a lot of trucks.
And if you want me to, I got to be honest with you. I got to be honest with you. I do not shed one tear for them.
No, they were greedy.
Well, it wasn't greedy. Look, they made a decision. They took a risk. They didn't know what they were taking a risk on.
Right.
So if you're going to do a cliff dive and you didn't check out the rocks below, so sorry you smashed yourself on the rocks. But I'm not diving after you.
No, you know what? You can't. They were greedy. They didn't do their homework because they heard there was gold in them there hills. And
I'm only going to say one thing to the guy who did a cliff dive and got into the business. Can you give me the keys just before you dive? I'll drive it home for you.
So with that being said, I'm looking at the time. Michael, we appreciate you for taking time out of your schedule to come on and join us and talk with us for an hour. If you don't mind,
everybody,
if you would be so kind, let people know if you don't mind, let people know how they can find you.
If you got financial questions, If you got financial questions, more than welcome to email me, michael.lampel, Lampel, @gmail.com. Ask me any kind of financial questions you want. I'm a man of many experiences, most of them bad. I'm welcome to share it.
Chuck,
Yeah.
wrap this thing up.
Yeah, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, best way to get in touch with me is still Chuck at Traffix, TRAFFIX.com. Please put your phone number on the email and I will call you back rather than sit there and try to email you. And I'm not on my computer all the time like I used to be, so be patient. I will get to you as soon as I look at my emails. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back. We're in a hole for now.
Except one thing. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, he's at the Boom Boom Room at the corner of 427.
Well, listen, everybody. I'm glad that everyone took the time out to join us. Like I said, next week we possibly will not have a show. It's got a little something planned special for the missus. So give us a break unless we can get a chance to get a pre-recorded show in. And if that's the case, don't worry about it. You'll never know. We'll have it loaded up so that you guys will be able to have. We'll be coming to you. But in the meantime and in between time, we appreciate you for taking time out of your schedule to join us here on the Rates and Lanes podcast. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you took a little bit of time to hang out with us. We're always eternally grateful for you doing so. If you don't mind, if you found any of the information that we shared with you guys tonight helpful in any kind of way, tell a friend to tell a friend. Like, share, and subscribe to the show. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. All of the different platforms. Find us there. We're open for suggestions for future shows. Please please follow up with us. Let us know what it is that you would like to know. This is your show. And remember, there's no admission fee. So all we ask for you to do is just please like, share, and subscribe. Help us grow the platform. Help us grow the show. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we want you guys to stay safe, stay healthy, keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and God willing, we'll talk at you soon. Not sure if it'll be next week, but we'll be back soon. God bless you and good night.
Catch on the flip-flop. God bless.